Rocks can be formed in many different ways, and volcanoes form rocks from hot lava. Basalt is when it cools underground, and pumice stone is when it cools above ground. So, section 1.4 in our textbook is called Getting a Handle on Time. So, during the 18th and 19th centuries, geologists considered violent events such as earthquakes, volcanoes, and floods to be the main source of change in the environment. And William Smith proposed that sedimentary rock layers that he had mapped were deposited over England by a series of floods. And these violent explanations are now called catastrophist theories. And a main component of these theories is that they involve a process of a different type or intensity than those observed in the present. So these big dramatic things happened, and this is why we see changes in our Earth. These theories of catastrophism fit in well with the human experience because the processes at work in the present seem too weak and slow to explain evidence of a dramatic change in the Earth's past. So it's hard to imagine that the slow processes observed in the present could have created the Badlands or Mount Rundle or Red Rock Coulee. And because we can't see them happening, so it's hard to imagine that the wind and rain actually create these landscapes. James Hutton believed that to unlock the mysteries of the past, you must understand the processes at work in the present. And this was the principle of uniformitarianism. So this principle is that the geological processes in action today have always fundamentally operated in the same way throughout Earth's history. So erosion has always been wind and water. And upthrusting has always been kind of a slow process. And rivers have always slowly eroded valleys, and sedimentation happens through wind and water deposition. So Hutton observed that there were nearly vertical layers of rock beneath horizontal layers. Right? So we might have some vertical layers of rock and then horizontal layers of rock. So this led him to propose that the bottom layers were originally deposited horizontally, but then were subsequently tilted. And so we can see this in the Rocky Mountains in Alberta. So then after long periods of erosion, so after they were tilted, layers then were going to be deposited horizontal on top, which is going to be called unconformity. So a surface in a rock sequence that breaks the pattern due to erosion or lack of deposition. So this is unconformity. This is something that doesn't happen the way it should. And we can see this in lots of places, like I said, for example, in the Rocky Mountains. So all of underneath our feet is made up of rocks and minerals. A mineral is a natural pure substance. It could be an element or a compound, like salt or iron. And rocks are natural substances that contain one or more minerals held together. And we have three types of rocks and the types of rocks actually cycle between each other. We have igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. Igneous rocks are formed when magma from the Earth's core rises, cools, and solidifies, forming crystals. And this process is called crystallization. Magma that moves out of the crust and cools quickly is called extrusive igneous rock. And these rocks have small crystals. It's also known as pumice. Magma that never reaches the Earth's surface and cools slowly is called igneous rock. And these igneous rocks have large crystals. And so if you've ever seen very black obsidian rock, it's shiny and smooth. This was from magma that never reached the Earth's surface before it cooled. Sedimentary rocks are made up of sediments that have eroded or weathered from igneous or metamorphic or even other sedimentary rocks, and even could have the remains of dead plants and animals in them. So it's just how sediments have been deposited. These materials are deposited in layers or strata and then squeezed and compressed into rock in a process called lithification. Because of this, most fossils are found in sedimentary rocks because we have that ability to deposit sediments on top of organisms that are deceased. And they don't undergo the same kind of heat and pressure that igneous and metamorphic rocks undergo. So metamorphic rocks are when sedimentary or igneous rocks are transformed by heat or pressure. So metamorphic, so metamorphosized, it's to change form. So these metamorphic rocks were a sedimentary rock that then got squeezed with a lot of heat and pressure, or even igneous rocks were squeezed with a lot of heat and pressure and their form has now changed. So this image of the rock cycle can show that all the three types of rocks are related to each other. So metamorphic rock um, is formed when either igneous rock or sedimentary rock undergo heat and pressure. Igneous rock is formed from the cooling of magma. And sedimentary rock is formed after any type of rock, igneous, metamorphic, or sedimentary, becomes weathered and it forms a sediment. It will then compact and cement and form sedimentary rock. So all the stages in the rock cycle are um, connected to one another in this way. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson.